I'll cut to the chase. The form of propulsion that's faster than light is thought propulsion. You can think of the furthest point in the galaxy or the universe and be there instantly. When I saw this, Dr. Sarfati proposed a series of 24 pages of equations incorporating metallurgy with awareness and consciousness. And he said all three of them are tied in. And when I saw that information, I said, Dr. Sarfati, I said, could this be the means that the visitors are using to traverse space and time? And he said, absolutely.
Irina, did you have a question?
No, but I find it very interesting. My contacts talk about thought energy as being a big part of the propulsion system of their ships.
Yeah, I've seen that too. So but that is incredibly exciting.
Yes. Yeah. If you folks recall, the book that came out maybe 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, The Day After Roswell by Colonel Philip Corso, who was tasked. He was tasked with planning the technology recovered at Roswell so that there would be a patent history in the United States for these technologies. Well, when he was given access to the craft and to the debris, and there's photographs of this on the internet, they showed the control panel of the ship that showed where you could put your hands on the control panel. And they had, if you recall, they had headbands. They were communicating thoughts through the headband and through their hands to the control system of the ship. And I mentioned that to Dr. Sarfati, and he said, yes. He said, that's how they do it.
No, that makes total sense. Because that's so immediate. I know that a while back, and Frank, you might know this more than I, but they were, at one point, the technology for pilots that were flying jets was to put technology so their eye movements would be part of the steering. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
So in a way, eye movements, it's not that far to say thought.
Well, if you recall, there was a movie made, I guess, in the late 70s or early 80s with Clint Eastwood, where they had a helmet where they were controlling the flight of their jet with thoughts through the helmet.
Yes. That's right.
I forget the name of that movie, but it was ahead of itself.
Thomas, do you remember that movie?
No, I don't remember that movie.
I remember the movie, but I don't remember the name of it.
Yeah, it was a single word. It was
a Clint Eastwood movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me look it up.
And he played the pilot who was testing the technology.
Yeah.
That was on his cell phone right now, looking for the Clint Eastwood movies, and we'll see if we can pin this down. Frank, incredible. Absolutely amazing.
It's amazing. It really is amazing. And I was told that Dr. Sarfati was shown, it's called memory metal that was recovered at Roswell, and it looks like aluminum foil, and it's very, very thin as a sheet of paper, and you could curl it up in your hands, and then open open the palm of your hand, and it'll
constitute itself.
It'll go back into its original shape. It can't be cut by lasers. It can't be affected by acid or anything like that. And one of Joe Foster's friends by the name of Bruce Pearson knew an engineer at Bell Labs who gave him copies of that memory metal from Roswell. And I know Joe's trying to get him to come onto your program to talk about it. He was actually given this and played with it in his house in his basement, trying to affect the metal in some way. And he said, you can't affect it.
Thomas, tell Frank, and the others kind of know this already because you've said this, but Tom, when you were in Roswell, tell Frank and the others again about what you acquired.
Okay, I didn't acquire this at Roswell.
Louder and closer to your screen.
I'm sorry. Okay, is that better?
Oh, much better. Thank you, Tom.
Okay. I have a small piece of metal that, according to my brother-in-law's mother in letters, there's letters where she wrote about this, that this piece of metal is a portion of the Roswell craft that crashed and blew up over the Foster Ranch. It's not the memory metal. But
Okay.
it's probably, I have the impression, it's probably from the underbelly of the ship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I had it tested, you know, it took me a long time to locate a company who was willing to do a bulk analysis on it for me, since I wasn't part of some college or something like that. But they did it. And I don't remember now the exact number. I believe that it contained, they check for everything below uranium, right? They don't try for the radioactive ones. I think it has 71 different elements in it, right? And so that test cost $1,000. And then I said, I also would like to have some of the isotopes checked. And they said, well, we will charge you $100 per isotope, per element, to check the isotope.
Oh,
so I said, well, I don't have enough money for that. I don't have $7,100, you know, but the elements that it had the most of are the silver, copper, lead, and zinc. So I said, well, I'll pay for just the silver, lead, copper, and zinc. And what you see when I got the report, then I also obtained, after a lot of searching around on the internet, the most current report from the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry in Scotland, and they produce a report on a regular basis of the highest and lowest percentages of all the different isotopes for all of the different elements of every sample ever found on the Earth. And the silver, lead, and zinc were within earthly abundances, but the copper was off the chart. The copper was higher for the, I think, if I remember correctly, the isotope that has the same number of protons and neutrons is, I believe, copper 63. And I think that the only isotope of copper that anyone knows about is copper 66. It had more copper 66 and therefore less copper 63 than anything ever reported by the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, right? So then, you know, it occurred to me, can I get an authoritative opinion from a scientist who can say, you know, and you know, who knows what he's talking about, that it wasn't from a meteorite, right? So I searched and searched, and eventually I got in touch with Professor Emeritus Robert O. Clayton from the Enrique Fermi Institute in Chicago. And he used to teach classes about meteors, right? Meteorites. So he wrote back to me and he said, I can give you 4 reasons why it's not anything from a meteorite. I don't remember I don't know if I can remember all of them, but one of them was, it has much more silver in it than has ever been found in any meteorite. And another one was, if I remember correctly, that if it had been a meteorite, it would have contained carbon and silicon, you know, in some substantial amount, and it doesn't. It just traces, you know, tenths of a part per million, something like that. And then the other thing was that he said, in order for the meteorites to actually not burn up and travel all the way to the Earth and fall to the Earth, this has to come from farther away than that, than the maximum distance that they ever come. He said, because the way the Big Bang worked is such that from the distances that, the relatively small distances that any meteorite travels to the Earth, it will have the same abundances of the isotopes of copper as what you find on everything on the Earth. So this has to come from farther away than that, right? And of course, it's shiny. You know, it's not like a rock or something like that. It's shiny. It's quite obviously the product of technology. You know, so I would say, you know, that, you know, I can't prove to anybody that this is from the Roswell ship. I would have to have the Roswell ship sitting there and say, there, you see, you'll slice off a piece of the ship and you can see that this is the same stuff. I can't do that. No, but all I can say is that everything that I've found from the research that I've done corroborates what my brother-in-law's mother said in those letters. And the idea was that it was her husband. Her husband was a tester at a company, and when they had all those pieces they were shipping into the Dallas-Fort Worth aircraft plant. My brother, who was in the Air Force Reserve, says this was known as military aircraft plant number 4. He was, her husband was a tester, and they would hand off pieces of the Roswell debris to him, and he would do like what you were talking about. He would try melting them, you know, and this and that. And the original thing was, like you say, like a thin sheet, like a handkerchief. And he melted it into a mold made out of sand, And so what I have, and my brother said, yes, that's exactly the shape of the sand molds they were using in those days, right? And his brother, the reason that this piece of metal got out of the government aircraft plant was that his brother, Wilson, was a foreman at the plant. And all the regular workers were getting searched when they left the plant to make sure they weren't trying to smuggle out any Roswell debris. But since he was a foreman, he wasn't getting tested, so he did smuggle it out, right? So, so my brother-in-law sent it to me, and he said, I know you're interested in this, and if you can find out anything...
Tom, you unmute. Unmute.
Oh, I unmuted. Oh, I'm sorry. So he said, if there's anything significant you can find out about this, please go right ahead and do your work, so that was what I did. Then what was also interesting was that the piece of the Roswell debris, it looks oxidized on the top, right? I don't exactly know, but it has a dark black color on the top. But when you, saw it, and when they took the sample to use for the bulk analysis at this laboratory, they had some kind of very high-power saw that could saw loose a piece, and it was bright, shiny inside, And so I was curious about the oxidation, right? So my brother, who was a metallurgist and is retired now, but also, as I said, was in the Air Force Reserve, he seems to have been indoctrinated that if anybody ever mentions anything about UFOs, you should always, say stuff that implies that it's all nonsense, right? So he said to me, Tom, what you have there isn't anything unusual. It's a brazed alloy that's used when they weld together the parts, the joints in handlebars to bicycles to prevent them from falling apart, right? And he said, here, I'll give you the name of a company that makes brazed alloys, and you write to them and ask them to send you a sample, and you'll see it's the same thing, right? So I wrote to them, and I told them the concentrations, of the silver and the copper and the lead and the zinc. And they said, well, we'll send you our catalog, and you choose the one that you want, and we'll send it to you. So they sent me, I ordered the one that had the highest percentage of silver, right? And so it didn't look anything like the Roswell one. It was yellowish, and it had a lot of zinc in it. And I said, well, my piece doesn't have anywhere near as much zinc as your brazed alloy has in it. And they said, well, then that's no brazed alloy, because it wouldn't do its job. It would have to have the zinc. The zinc is what makes it pliable, so you can weld it onto the joints in the handlebars. He said, that's no brazed alloy, right? So then I placed an order on chemistry.com, and I got some copper, some lead, some silver, and some zinc. And I tried mixing them together as close as I could to approximate the proportions like in the Roswell debris. And then I took that to a jewelry shop, and I asked them to melt it down and mix it all up, and I'll come and pick it up. So they did that. And guess what? Within the one day that they did that, it also oxidized on the top. But the brazed alloy did not, right? So I don't know, I shouldn't hold up because, we're supposed to have a meeting.
No, it's interesting. No, go ahead.
Yeah. So,
the amount of research that you did, the amazing...
Yeah, it's amazing.
Congratulations. That's amazing work. Good for you.
It is.
And I suppose I should explain that, I really didn't know who to take it to give me any advice or what to do, right? So I decided, well, let's try Bud Hopkins. He's scheduled to give a lecture at the Edgar Cayce Foundation. So I went to see him. And I said, have you got a minute or two after it was over? And I said, I have a piece of metal here that I believe is from... And he... As soon as he heard all this, he said, I'm going to write a name and email address of somebody on a piece of paper, and I'm going to fold it up, and I'm going to give it to you, and you put it in your pocket. And I'm not going to say the name, and I don't want anybody to be able to hear anybody say the name of this person. But he'll be able to help you, and he doesn't want his name known because he's a professor at a university. He has access to equipment to do a spectroscopic analysis. But he will get fired and ridiculed, and it'll be the end of his career if anybody knows that he's doing this, right? I sent him a sample, right? And he did his spectroscopic analysis. But when I showed it to my brother said, Tom, he did it wrong. He's obviously not a metallurgist. He's a biologist. He had his equipment set for organic material. He said, that's no good. You got to get a bulk analysis. You can't rely on a spectroscopic analysis. But what this professor also did for me was he photographed the little shavings I sent him. I had shaved off shavings with a file. He photographed them at very high magnification. I don't remember how high, maybe 5,000 times or something like that. And the curious thing was that the color was not consistent. It had little light areas and little dark areas, And, I can't say, with any kind of scientific authority, but what I would say is that what they reminded me of, the patterns of these light and dark areas, would be circuit boards.
Really? Wow.
So I have all these reports. I have the bulk analysis report, the isotope report. I have the photographs. I have all this stuff, And with Nick's help, I contacted Stephen Greer's wife and asked, if they would like to meet me somewhere, and go over all this. And she said no, because he's busy working on his movie, So now that the movie is out, maybe he'll be interested again. Maybe I'll just send him another email and see if he'll be interested.
Sure, because you have something very valuable there to share.
Remind them.
It is really cool. Piece of metal.
And
very cool.
I don't know what to say about this, but there were people at Nick's meeting. I handed around, and everybody got a chance to hold it in their hand. And many of them said that they felt some energy coming from it, sort of like a psychic type energy. So that's also extremely interesting. And
it sure is, my God.
The other thing I was just going to say is, I gave Nick a copy, and I have a DVD of a lecture at a UFO conference given by Philip Corso's son. And what he remarked on about that alien autopsy footage from Ray Santilli is he said, when they get to the point where they open up the skull and they take out the brain, you really only you don't see the full skull. You never see the whole head, everywhere close up. He said they are deliberately not showing you the part where that band that you were talking about comes into contact with the head. And he said if you were to see that, you would see, something going on there, that goes on there when the aliens fly the ship.
Of course.
So,
he also did a lecture where, you may have heard about this too, that his father left him files that are like a 5-foot tall stack of files.
Oh, no,
and
I didn't know.
You didn't hear this? Well, this is unbelievable. He's supposed to be coming out with another book with information that based upon what his father had left him.
Wow.
And he's been visited several times by intel agencies saying, we know that your father left all this documentation.
Mm-hmm.
They said, we believe you can release it.
Yeah.
However, they do not want him to release any information regarding the Kennedy assassination. They said that is still persona non grata. You can't touch that. And in an attempt, his family builds airplanes in Florida. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
And he said to try to create a situation where he wouldn't publish this information, they began to give him contracts to build aircraft for congressional members and for Senate members. They would prepay them, prepay the aircraft and never to accept delivery.
Wow. That's incredible.
So they were trying to get him to back off of things. He said he does not want to back off of it.
Yeah.
He said some of the things in his father's file that he wants to reveal to the public are that there are parallel Earths. They said his father talked about it in the day after Roswell. He talked about time travel. He said we had the ability to go forward and backward in time, and he visited some of the parallel Earths. They said one of them, Germany won the Second World War and were controlling the Earth. There was another one where Russia won the Cold War and were controlling the planet. He said we visited these and we saw them for ourselves. And the son wants to reveal this information, and his family is really upset. They don't want him to publish anything. The mother and his sons don't want him to publish, but he says, my father would want all this to come out.
Yeah.
So what he did was he distributed, and it's being held by several different people. So the files are not at his house. And He said, when the time is right, this is all going to come out. And it's interesting. I believe, Nick, you told me you had Major Filer on your program.
Yeah.
Well, we had a visit of a fellow who shared some information with George and I at George's house in Medford Lakes. He showed us a document that was, I don't know how he got his hands on it, but it was a scientific paper that was presented to select members of the Intel Committee of the Congress in 1978, and it went into great detail talking about parallel Earths, and it was all documented. He showed it to us. It had the congressional seal on it. He would not allow either George or I to take photographs of it, but that document exists. I've seen it, and it validates that there are parallel Earths.
Well, it doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any more interesting on a grand scale than what you just said. That is absolutely, even though I've heard it before in various forms, that information absolutely knocks me right out.
So you can imagine what's in that stack of documents that are 5 feet high.
Wow.
Oh.
Absolutely amazing.
Wow.
I think that a man who has been guest speaker on our meetings several times, who is a personal friend of Nick and was a personal friend of the father Corso, would be a good person to be in on this if he's not already. His name is Robert Vanderklok. Remember, Nick?
Yes, I know this person. I know him.
He showed up at one of the meetings. He took out of a portfolio and then quickly put it back in again. An original typescript.
Tom, you got to unmute.
Oh, I'm sorry. I keep on hitting the wrong button. He had with him an original typescript of Colonel Corso's book that he recalled The Dawn of a New Age. And the idea was that what Vanderklok told us is that the co-author of The Day After Roswell, Mr. William Burns, is actually CIA. And Colonel Corso knew that. And what he explained is that when the book was about to be released, Corso wanted to go through with a highlighter and cross out all the stuff that was misinformation that Burns had put in there. And the publisher said, you don't have time. You either release the book the way it is or it never gets released at all. And he said, all right, well, then I'll have to release it. So the idea is that the Dawn of a New Age manuscript does not contain any misinformation from Corso. It's just, from Burns. It's 100% the real stuff straight from Corso. And they published it in Italian, unfortunately. Corso wrote it in English. They published it in Italian. And it seems to me that, I hope it's still there on the internet somewhere, that before he died, Stanton Friedman paid somebody to translate it back into English, and that was floating around. I don't remember, if it's still out there or not. I haven't looked for it recently. No.
Tom, I got to ask the question: why would they do it in Italian? I'm just curious. Why would that be in the first place?
It seems to me, I don't remember exactly the details, but there was this other guy in Italy whose last name was Beata, and he sort of did not want, the whole world and to really be able to read this stuff. And he had some kind of an influence on it that they only published it in Italian. But I don't remember exactly what it was. No, because, if they would have just simply, Corso's son talked about, well, maybe the hell with, taking it to a publisher, the hell with that. Maybe we should just photograph every page of it in English, and just have it as a facsimile rather than a published book. But for whatever reason, there was a lot of fighting going on, just like everything else, to try to suppress it. So that's where we stand with it. So thank you.
Do you folks recall the greatest number of book sales for Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, where the greatest number of book sales came from?
No.
You ready for this?
Uh-oh.
The bookstore at the Pentagon.
Oh,
that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Wow.
That speaks volumes.
What?
Wow.
Great. That's great information.
More copies of his book were sold there than any other bookstore anywhere in the country.
I'd like to go around the group here. Just if anybody would like to contribute to this, if I'm going to ask Sonia and Carol and Rena and Tom, of course, and Frank. If this is my question to you, and please go close to your screen so I can hear you. We can all hear you really well. This is my question. I'm going to start with Rena. Rena, if you could go anywhere in time, and I'm going to say back in time, I'm going to qualify it, back in time, where would you like to be and what would you like to observe?
Oh, wow.
All right, I'll come back. Al, how about you?
Yeah, come back to me.
Okay. Rena? One thing. Just give me one.
Maybe to see Leonardo da Vinci paint.
Okay, well, yeah.
That's a good answer.
That's a good one. All right, and Hal, how about you?
I really don't know.
Okay. I think I would like to go back in Jesus' life, and I would like to see him maybe talking to the apostles. I'd like to see perhaps when he was born. I would love to see that. That would be very meaningful.
Yeah.
Okay, Thomas, how about you, sir?
Good answer, Tom.
I would want to go see Mozart, and I would try to
see
if I could get him to take me on as a composition student and hear him explain to me what's good composition and what isn't. I believe I could write music in approximating the style of the period, and then I could get a chance to hear him say, no, well, you really need to do this and this and this.
I think that's for you especially. That's an excellent choice.
Yeah.
Tom, quick question. Did he take on students?
Yes, he did. As a matter of fact, one of his advanced students, who he nevertheless thought wasn't very bright, is Franz Xavier Süssmayr. And the completion of Mozart's Requiem, that he was working on up until the second that he died, they wanted to have it finished and perform it. And Mozart was, in the movie Amadeus, he's lying there in bed and they have Salieri. It wasn't Salieri, it was Süssmayr. And Mozart was trying like crazy to explain to Süssmayr, how to finish it, right? And so Süssmayr finished it, but he wasn't really very bright and he didn't really do such a good job, right? So then another thing involving Mozart and Süssmayr is that about 6 months before Mozart died, his wife had gone to one of those little tiny towns where they have those natural bodies of water, lakes and ponds that have minerals in them. And in those days, they used to go and soak in the minerals to try to cure themselves, and get healthy. His wife had gone to one of those towns, and Mozart went off and to visit her for a few days. And it was right around the time for the, what do they call it? Ascension Day, right? And there was a little church, and the pastor at the church asked Mozart if he said, can I commission you to write a piece that we can perform at our church on Ascension Day? And Mozart said, yeah. So what Mozart wrote is that famous motet Ave Verum Corpus, right? So then Mozart passed away about 6 months later. So when it came time for Ascension Day the next year, this pastor from this church wrote to Mozart's address, and of course his widow opened up the paper and it said, this is me again, can Mozart write us another piece? And she had to write back and say, unfortunately, I'm sorry, but he passed away. And then, so the guy wrote back and he said, well, who's his replacement, right? And she said, Süssmayr, right? So Süssmayr also wrote an Ave Verum Corpus, right? And it took me a long time to find a recording of it, but I finally did, right? And what you find is that he's trying as hard as he can to do what Mozart taught him how to do. But he really doesn't have a clue. His is just, mediocre. I don't know if it's worse than Salieri, about the same as Salieri. It's just mediocre. There's just absolutely no comparison between the one that Mozart wrote and the one that he wrote. So Mozart did take on students, and they didn't necessarily have to be bright. And he might have considered me to be about the dumbest student he would have. But I would love to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Let's go to Carol. Carol, my question was to the group. Where would you like to go if you were to go somewhere in the past, and what would you like to observe? Carol, go ahead. And be close to the screen so I can hear you.
Actually, Tom changed my mind about what I was going to say.
Oh.
Made me think, Ave, Ave, Verum Corpus Ex Maria Virgine. I sang.
Right.
Very nice, Carol.
I used to be in a chorus. We sang, I love Mozart. I was going to say that I don't think I would want to go anywhere because the best time is this time, as Dickens.
Wow.
His book, A Tale of Two Cities. No, wasn't that it? The worst of times, the best of times. But actually, Thomas made me think. Well, I think it would be great to go back and actually hear certain musicians play their pieces.
Yes.
So I would, not at a particular time, but it would be great to hear Liszt play, Chopin play. So that's great. Or I love Schubert, and so many wonderful pieces of music that you could go back and listen to, and it would give you the feel of the time and the culture.
Yes,
so I would say there's a variety of times I would go, but I would go specifically to hear a famous musician play. It would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent choices. Excellent. Now let's go. Sonia, I'd like to ask you also the same question. Journeying back to a previous time in history, anywhere in the world, where would you like to go and what would you like to observe?
It would be...
Sonia, we can't hear you.
Jesus Christ, the Last Supper. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Yes, he said the Last Supper, right?
Last Supper, Jesus Christ.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That would be so, oh my God, so incredible.
Yeah.
To see that, that would be, again, that's amazing. Yes.
I have an answer now.
Okay. Now, Hal said he has an answer, so let's go to Hal.
Okay.
Hal.
2 quick places. One, after everything I've read, I'd like to see what Marie Antoinette really was like in the French Revolution. They said she was much brighter than they say, much more integral part of the history of it.
Okay.
And I'd also like to go back to when my parents were younger, see if half the stories I've heard that they've told me were really true or not.
I love Back to the Future. That's one of my favorite films for those reasons that we just said.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody has seen that, correct?
Yes.
I love that movie so many ways. Okay, Frank, you please, will you, sir?
Boy, there's been a lot of great answers to this question. I would like to go back and see the creation of this planet.
Oh.
That's what my choice would be.
Wow. I think that's more than a weekend.
Yeah, more than a weekend. But I have some comments regarding music I'd like to share with your group.
Well, please do. Go ahead, please.
Okay. Tom, I think you may know some of this already. There was an English researcher, a composer, not English, Italian, and he was studying the Last Supper, and he noticed the position of the apostles' hands and the positions of the pieces of bread on the table, and it occurred to him these could be musical notes. And he put together a composition based upon the notes that he found hidden in the Last Supper painting. And it's an incredible piece of music.
Is there a way to access that on the internet?
It's on YouTube.
Oh, my God. I'm gonna have to find
And
it.
you may have heard of this, too. There was a study done in Europe of people who have bipolar issues or they have ADT, they have problems concentrating, they have brain damage. They found that the musical chords of Mozart are the most complex chords ever created by man. And they said the chord structure in the magic flute, they found has the ability to reconnect synapses of the brain and create a healing through listening to that. Now, my cousin's wife works with autistic children up on the main line outside of Philly, and she read the report, and she's been working with autistic children there. And she said she could put a set of headphones on their over their ears. She plays it through the headphones, and they smile and they calm down. She said those that are too fidgety, she plays it in the background very softly, and the kids just love loud.
That's incredible.
It's really, really amazing. Really amazing.
It is. Oh, wow.
And
go ahead. You had something you want to say. Sonia.
Yeah. When I was teaching first grade, and, they get restless, especially when it was time for writing, composition, whatever, they would be restless. But when soon as I put the Mozart, that would play the CD in the background very softly, they were so quiet, composed, and they came up with most creative writing. The imagination really flew. There was something about his music that really just calmed the class down. I always played it when it was time for writing.
Tom, is it true that Mozart's chords are the most complex ever constructed? Is that true, Tom?
I'm the moderator. I'm the moderator.
I would have thought that some of the other ones, like...
Thomas, stop for a second. Carol had her hand up, and I need to recognize her. Please.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Carol, I saw your hand. Please go ahead.
What is the name of the YouTube video that has the music based on the Last
Supper? The hidden music inside the painting of the Last Supper. And I forget the Italian researcher's name, and he's a composer. And it's a beautiful piece of music.
We got to hear that. Thank you so much for that information. Okay, now Tom,
you're welcome.
You got a comment.
I would have thought that some of the chords that Wagner and Debussy used were more complicated, but there are absolutely amazing, mind-blowing chord changes in many pieces by Mozart. And not only that, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of the development section in the last movement of the 40th Symphony, it's almost a tone row. It's not harmonized, it's in unison, but it's almost like a 12-tone thing that he composed there. And in his G minor quintet, catalog number 516, in the slow movement, he takes at the very end, within like the last 6 or 7 bars, he takes a motive that had always occurred on the beat and displaces it by 1/8 note. And, of course, alters the chords underneath it to correspond to fit together with that, and creates something that, you feel like this is something you would have never thought of yourself for the end of the piece, but it has a sort of an inevitability. You can't imagine anything else in the universe ever fitting in there to end the piece than what he did. So, I certainly would consider many of his chord changes to be quite complex, approaching the most complex that anybody ever did.
How would you rank the Magic Flute in regards to complex chord structure?
Well, it has a lot of complex ones, and then it also has those melodies, by and large, are a little bit more folk song-like, similar to the melodies in the Hansel and Gretel by Humperdinck, right?
Yes.
And so those, it's a juxtaposition back and forth of those relatively simplistic ones with the more adventuresome ones. And the Ave Verum is pretty adventuresome too. And the last movement that he finished in the Requiem before he passed away, which was a Lacrimosa, those chords, will blow anybody's mind. I'm absolutely blown away every time I hear that. And I say, oh my God, look at what he came up with. They teach you, since I was studying counterpoint and theory and harmony and composition and all those kind of things, they teach you what are known as secondary dominants. After you learn all the regular primary harmonies, they teach you the secondary dominants. Now, well, Mozart, I don't know, there's no name for it, but he's like going to another level even past that, right?
Yes.
And of course, he makes wonderful use, and so of course so did Beethoven and Mendelssohn and a lot of these different people. He makes wonderful use of what is known it's only known as this in classical music, the augmented sixth chord, right? And if you try to explain what this is to people who only know about popular music or jazz or something, they can't figure out what you're talking about, But the idea is that, this chord can resolve inward or outward. And, the place in the slow movement of Beethoven's Fifth Symphony where he resolves it outward and he modulates from the key of A flat to the key of C, that must have, at the world premiere, they must have, jumped out of their seats or something like that.
Yeah, blown our minds. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So Mozart makes very, very knowledgeable use of that too. And then the other one that he uses judiciously and sometimes in unexpected ways is the so-called Neapolitan second, right? And that they do use in popular music, and they understand what it is, But yes, you're quite right. There are extremely blazing new trails, uses of harmony in Mozart's music, yes.
Tom, you need to read that report out of Europe. I think it's either out of Switzerland or Germany. Oh. And people who are working with autistic children have told me they've begun applying it, and they said the children really respond, and it takes their emotional levels really down to a balanced state, and it's all natural.
Wow.
There's one other musical story I wanted to share with you. I had the privilege of knowing the senior physicist at Lockheed here in Morristown, New Jersey, and his wife. I knew his wife and I knew his mother-in-law. I've been friends with the family for a long time. And he had shared incredible information with us. He told us that the difference between the black world of technology and what the public knows is 65 years. He said that things are going to be revealed are going to be mind-blowing, but he said they're all positive. So he's really a really brilliant person. His name is Jorge.
Wow.
And I said, Jorge, they would invite me over for dinner. His wife was a gourmet cook. And I'd say, Jorge, where do you get your inspiration from? And he said, you're not going to believe me. And I said, no, why would I doubt you? And he said, when I come home from work, he puts on improvisational jazz albums. And he said, I'm listening to the music, but in addition to the music, they're feeding me advanced physics formulas. He writes them down, Tom, and he incorporates them into his work at Lockheed. And he said, the music is never the same. They play each piece differently. But he said, I'm getting physics formulas. He said, I'm being taught advanced physics by improvisational jazz musicians. And music is math.
Of course.
And he said, I use those formulas in my work at Lockheed, and they work.
Oh, amazing.
Now, you know where his consciousness has to be able to do that?
It's hard to even imagine such a thing. Wow.
And he's a very humble man. He's brilliant, but he's very, very humble.
Wow.
Carol, you've got your hand up, so please, what's your question? Carol, you got to unmute.
Yes, I just wanted to add...
Really loud, louder than you talk normally.
I wanted to add something to the musical discussion. The composer, Scriabin. Scriabin is of interest because he was a theosophist. And he thought that his music was mystical and had great power. In fact, he believed there was a certain chord that if you struck it a certain way, you could actually cause an earthquake or some sort of thing like that. He also had a color organ that connected different colors to different notes. A Russian workmate I had, who was a musician in Russia, said he heard some of his pieces played, and he thought the enormity of the sound was going to create a problem in the music hall. So a lot of his writings have not been translated, I understand, but I thought maybe I'd put that out to Tom.
That's very fascinating. Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carol. That's great. Wow. Anybody else have any comments? Sonia?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, Rena?
Years ago, there was a study of Mozart's music, and they found that it raised the IQ of college students taking the test if they listened to the music while they were taking the test.
I remember reading that study. You're right.
Yeah.
Something else musically related you folks may know is when Frank Lloyd Wright's mother was told that she was with child, she played classical music constantly, and when her son Frank Lloyd Wright was born, she played music constantly in his nursery 24/7, probably up until the age of maybe 6 or 7.
Wow.
That's incredible. I can really understand that. That makes, to me, isn't that total sense? Yes.
It does.
It's giving an advanced, amazing abilities before you're even born.
Yes.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
We talked a little bit before about Corso, and I wanted to share something with you regarding my mom's sister's husband. He worked in the Air Force for 20 years designing closed-circuit monitoring systems for missile silos all over the world. And he's always known my interest in UFOs, and he would always say to me, Frank, they're here. The government knows about them. Don't worry about it. Wow. But he shared some other things along the way. The lids on the missile silos, which are reinforced concrete, they're like maybe 8 or 10 feet thick. They weigh maybe 20 tons. He said some of the facilities that he had to design the monitoring systems for, the saucers would come over and flip the lids open of the silos just to show that they could do it. Now he told me that he saw the SR-71 fly as a prototype in 1957. In 1957, he saw the prototype of the SR-71, which gives you an idea of how far in advance they really are. And he told me when he was stationed in Turkey, he had very high security clearance. He had clearance to see satellite photographs of Mount Ararat, and he said Noah's Ark is on Mount Ararat. He said it's about the almost 13,000 foot level. He said in the wintertime it's covered by ice and snow. He said in the summertime it's exposed to the sunlight. And he said it's in two pieces. He said it's bigger than an aircraft carrier. And he said they did a study of the length of the timbers used to build it. And he said the trees that was cut from were more than 2,000 feet tall. Now there's no trees on Earth that are 2,000 feet tall today, but it was made from timbers that were 2,000 feet tall. He said the Turkish government will not allow any expeditions there because they don't want to validate either Judeo or Christian dogma. So he said, but it is there, and it's bigger than an aircraft.
I believe that.
Reading about that exact thing. I spent half a day reading about the findings of the ship, and they said that it had slipped at some point from a very higher level and slipped down slowly and landed in another place, and it was stopped by a gigantic rock. And then they had photographs of the site, and scientists took a metal detector and started finding lines that were being beeped were going on. And so they took a line, I think a plastic line, and started following that. And the lines were going exactly where the boat was, and the lines were where the nails were. And it was beeping, and there's photographs of that, and you can see the lines, and you can see it's absolutely as big as you're saying it was. It's exactly the same size as was given in the Bible, and you can see all the lines where those nails were. And that's another way to prove that that's exactly where it landed. It's an amazing story.
Wow. I was just truly weak. Well, if you recall, the Germans did an expedition to Mount Ararat in 1934, and apparently they have motion picture footage and still footage or still photos of the Noah's Ark. And when after the Second World War ended, the U.S. government took control of all that stuff. So they have all that in our archives.
Oh, wow. Did they ever say how many? They found the boat. They've proven the size and everything. Did they ever say basically how many animals they could have actually fit in it?
I've not heard that, but if it's larger than an aircraft carrier, you can put a lot of animals in there.
What I'm reading on the internet had a drawing of where all those different boxes were, where all those areas were of the animals, and it was huge. I couldn't. No, I got a question. How did they collect all those animals? Mm-hmm. How in the world could they have done that?
Maybe if they had help.
No, they said that what they believe, at least from what I've read, it's not every animal, it's animals of the area.
Of that specific area.
Right, because they don't think the flood was worldwide. They think it was within a contained area.
Okay, that makes some sense to me. So that's where they saved the animals that way from those areas. Okay, that makes sense.
Or if they used Amazon.
It's just such an incredible story.
It is. It sure is.
Stories that won't go away. I'm a student of the Rancher book. Frank, do you know that book?
Yes. Yes, of course.
Oh, good.
It's a classic.
I was giving a 1-hour study group before our DNNY 2-hour meetings. That was going on for a number of years because I'm a longtime student of the Urantia book, and I'm part of the Urantia Society of Greater New York. So is Hal. And
so, as you know, it's considered the second Bible.
It's a phenomenal masterwork.
It is a masterwork.
Just to let you guys know that if anybody is interested, one of our dearest friends, Carol, is now doing a study group online every Tuesday night from 7:30 to 8:30. So if anybody is interested in attending Carol's Zoom meeting where they read from the Urantia book and then ask questions, give me an email and I'll connect you with that. It's Tom, you're certainly a member of that. You've been there. And also, Al, you've also been a member of that. And Nancy also is a member of that too. And who else? Anthony, which was attending my study group when we were meeting at the center. He's also a member of Carol's group also, and it's excellent. Carol does a beautiful job of monitoring that group, so I highly recommend it. Tom, do you have any comments about Carol's group?
Well, what I would like to say is that it's fantastic how she helps people like me, the newcomers who haven't read any of this before. And if there's a passage that we're reading, because we're near the beginning now, that's a little obscure, but they explain something later, she looks it up. She has a huge concordance that she bought, that looks like it has even more pages than the Urantia book itself. And she looks things up in there and she says, oh, well, if you didn't understand about this, well, then in paper 140, in the 5th paragraph, it says this and this. And so she explains all these things, so that's really a tremendous help for people like me who are newcomers.
I got to say that Carol has such a sense of explaining clearly, with great clarity, some of the concepts as we read them. No one does it better than Carol.
Yeah.
She's an amazing. She's such a blessing when it comes to understanding the Urantia book.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
No, but you started to say something about Noah's Ark in the Urantia book.
Oh yeah, I suggest to everybody, and you can read the book online, urantiabook.org, urantiabook.org. The whole book is online, and you can look it up by chapter and look at the Urantia book's version of what happened with Noah and the flood. I absolutely recommend it. Also,
great endorsement.
The 4th part of the book, it's in 4 parts. The last part of the book, the 4th part of the book, is the entire life and teachings of Jesus. Have you been through that part of the book? Frank?
Oh, I'm trying to recall if I've been through that part of the book. I may have been through part of that, but not in its entirety.
I just have to say that one of my podcasts I do on Saturday nights, I do 4 every Saturday. I'm on the air doing a podcast. One of them is devoted to the Urantia book.
Wow.
One of them is devoted to Disclosure Network New York.
Yes.
One of them is a news program. We just did that last night with Michael Weeks, a really good researcher. And the 4th one is more of a breaking medical and other topics, and that's with a deep researcher, a wonderful friend of mine named Mary Jo Fahey. And Mary Jo Fahey, 19 years ago, with me, founded Disclosure Network New York.
Oh.
And she's phenomenal. She lives in Florida, and she does the show from Florida.
Yes.
Anyhow, a little ad there for my podcast, but I really recommend them. I get incredible people to be on my podcast. So
sounds to be so.
Okay, so with the final remaining, it's already 3:00. So is there any? I'm going to go around. Is there any other topic that's really paramount on your mind? Just give me a sentence or two of something that is really concerning you right now that we might be interested in. We're going to start with Sonia this time. Sonia?
Yeah. Tom was talking about the object that he had, that he brought once to the group, and remember, everybody had a turn touching.
Sonia, talk louder. I can't hear. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hear me now? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
A little better.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay. Tom, in one of the meetings, brought an object, remember? Yeah. And we all had a chance to handle it and pass it around. And I remember, which I share with you, that, after I touched the object, gradually, all my teeth started to bother me. And that night, I couldn't sleep because of all my teeth were hurting because I have a lot of fillings, okay, from way back. Oh. And I know that object couldn't be a meteorite because I've gone to a lot of crystal shows, gem and crystal rock show, and I handle a lot of meteorites. They sell them as scented and big chunks of it, and I handle a lot of them, okay? And I even brought some pieces home. I never had a problem with my teeth. I could handle, never. But when I handle his object, it was strange. It was really strange.
Very, very, very interesting.
I'll experience it again. Even if I get a pain, I just want to have that contact.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. Also, one of our members who is a psychic kind of gal, and she was saying this is from a huge distance away. She was getting a reading like that right away, right from the very beginning, the moment she touched it. Mm-hmm. Carol, do you have anything on your mind right now you'd like to share with everybody before we go?
Well, the
really loud, Carol. You're going to have to.
Epstein case has come back, so okay. I'm very interested in finding out what Ghislaine Maxwell is going to say.
Oh boy, that's a whole subject. Have you been getting the posts that we've been doing?
You sent on Epstein? I didn't see. I'll look back on them because I do read them.
Yeah, because there's quite a bit of things that aren't in the mainstream news that we have posted from various people who've given me really amazing information about that subject. So take a look at some of the posts in the last 2 weeks. Okay. How about Rena? What's on your mind, Rena? Is there any particular thing? Rena, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Nothing really.
Okay. Is your mind a blank?
Not quite, but
just kidding. Back to Al, how about you? What's your mind?
Well, I've been doing a lot of research lately into the oscillation of cats purring and how it has effect on both actually human bone healing and a lot of work with kids with disabilities such as ADD and such. And now I'm going to have to research more to see how that fits in with music like you were just talking about.
That's a fascinating subject. I mean, really, yeah. I want to know more about that myself. Tom, how about you? Before we go, what's on your mind right now? Is there another subject?
Well, I would say definitely the carelessness of people, and also not carelessness, but just simply being influenced by what Donald Trump has to say about the coronavirus, so that it is surging worse than it was in March in our country. And I imagine we're kind of the laughing stock of the world right now with this. And the effect, of course, that this has on the chances of Joe Biden being our next president. All of that stuff is very much on my mind right now.
I'm sure we all have that going on also. Thank you, Thomas.
Yeah.
Frank, how about you? What else is on your mind right now?
I have a comment regarding the discussion about the Roswell piece of material that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It reminds me of a discussion. There was a fragment of a saucer that was given by Billy Meyer to Marcel Vogel, who was the senior scientist at IBM. I don't know if any of you folks remember this, but Marcel Vogel was given a sample of one of the craft that the Palladians had given to Billy Meyer, and he studied it under an electron microscope, and he said it was composed of 17 elements that we knew, but there were other elements in it that we had no idea what they were.
Wow.
And he said that under an electron microscope, he said the molecules looked as if they flowed one into the other. And he said he's never seen that before.
Wow. No, that's amazing. No.
It really is amazing. It really is amazing.
That's incredible. I'm going to go in a very different direction. I'm very concerned about how the protesters are how it's playing in the press and how it's being looked at and felt in not only in America but in the entire world with the Black Lives Matter, with All Lives Matter, trying to get various groups to kind of fight with each other. And I'm feeling that divide and conquer is part of a very, very dark plan. And we have been posting things like that. It's a whole section of America that's exploding right now. And I'm just very concerned about that. And I just want to say that I want the truth to come out, and I want us to be one nation and united and not at each other's throats for any reason. We are all brothers and sisters, and everyone deserves a place at the table. I just wanted to
well stated.
Yeah. So anyhow, I love you all. Thank you so much. This has been Disclosure Network New York. This is our Zoom meeting, and we will be having another one on Sunday. It will be July 26th, and please tell your friends they are certainly welcome to join us. Just give them the way that they can RSVP. This is Nick Curto for Disclosure Network, hoping that you all our listeners, connect the dots in your life and stay safe and be kind to one another. Goodbye for now. Much love to you all.